This is Hannah. Yeah. Thanks to the sisters over here who pushed. Hannah, I forget what major you are.
Political science.
Hannah's a political senior, right?
Yeah.
Senior political science major. And it's interesting because as we've had this conversation up here, I mean, it all sounds well and good. Mentoring, oh, la 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 la. But why are we here spending 2 hours talking about it if it's all so easy to do? And so, so the next question to the group, they hate it because I said I was going to throw some in that they didn't know the answer to. What keeps you from being in a mentoring relationship? If it's all wonderful and we're hungry for it and we're having this dialogue and it's very important and it's about pushing me to my best self, what's the problem? So that's my question. What's the problem? What keeps us from having what we need in a mentoring relationship?
This may sound like a cop-out, but I think it's because women have trouble putting themselves first. I don't know that I intentionally do this, but I take care of everybody else's needs before mine. And so then at the end of the day, do I really want to start reading my journal articles so I can write my own article? I don't know. I just seem exhausted. And now that I say it, it's like, well, that's an excuse. I should put myself first, look at my goals. But I do think women have a tendency to not put themselves first.
I think my question would be, Dr. Harris, is it more that we don't pursue a relationship or that we don't ask for what we need in a relationship? Because I feel like those are very different.
Evidently, you've never met me before, but the rigidity of that question would not be something I would consider. So whatever...
Got it. Okay.
Whatever your little heart desires.
Okay. Well, I think that's funny because we were just talking about this at our table. I think I'm going to answer both questions. I think the thing that makes it hard for me to pursue a relationship is maybe that I won't have something to offer them, and that relationship, if I go to pursue that person might feel like they can't glean something from that relationship with me, because I think it's really important to have. We were talking at our table about how mentoring is a two-way street and that it's so unfair to assume that I know I kind of dwell on my experiences that I've had working in Washington, D.C., and all the mentors that I have. I wrote them down at the table, and I had about 15 of them, and the list could have gone on. And those people have voiced to me that there are things that I taught them, maybe not as much as they've taught me, but that there was a mutual and equal relationship. And I think that's really important in a mentoring relationship. And so I think that I have a hard time pursuing a mentoring relationship when I don't feel like I can give that person anything, or that there isn't something, that it wouldn't be equal and that it wouldn't almost be fair for them to mentor me if I couldn't give something back to them.
Can I just interrupt? Mm-hmm. Can you imagine if everyone felt that way? That you had nothing to give? To me, that's so sad.
And I think that actually that's interesting because it ties into the second question that we weren't really sure what the question was, and that I think if it would be difficult if the whole world was like that. And I think I was saying at our table, I don't, if you know me in the room, I don't really have a problem saying what I think or what I need. And so I think, and I've always been brought up that way, and not everyone has been brought up that way. And so I think if you've been conditioned to say, I need this from you, I want this from you, this is something that's really important to me, I think in a relationship where it needs to be mutual and equal, that I don't have a problem saying this is what I need, but I also feel like on the other end, I would want that person to say, this is what I need from you too, so that it was something where there was growth happening on both ends, because I think that's, to cultivate potential in me is something that I want that mentor to see in me and to help me grow, but I also feel like they need to be getting something out of it too. Otherwise, it's kind of, I don't want to be a dead weight to them.
Guess what they get out of it? They get the satisfaction when they see you achieve the goal that they helped you set. You don't have to give anything back, really. You do to them when you achieve that goal. So I mean, as somebody who's a lot older than you are, who's mentored a lot of people, nothing makes me happier than when somebody I'm mentoring actually achieves that goal and they come back to me, or if I write a letter of recommendation for somebody and they get that job. I mean, I'm happier than they are. I mean, so I hope you can.
Makes me feel better, so that's good.
A perfect example, and I'm going to totally put her on the spot, but is Larissa. I absolutely adore this woman. She is a blessing to have in class and a blessing to have as someone that I can talk to as a student-faculty relationship. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is that knowing she's very outspoken about the things she believes and cares about. She's one of the most passionate students I've ever had, and I love that. But she's also very quiet and reserved in some ways. And for her to be willing to sit up here on the stage in front of 200 people is not something that's comfortable for her, I'm sure. But it is a very proud moment for me to have her share in this experience with me. And that is so gratifying.
They call it in psychology, it's like every relationship has like, it's called like a win. Every relationship is a winning losing. So that's like the double win. So it's like, and I think it's like when I talk to people and they did something, I won because, you know, I pushed you to do it and then you did it. And so I'm so happy for you. And that means I'm a great person because I helped you do it too. So that's kind of how I see it, you know. Well, yeah, maybe it's just a big head or I don't know. But when I think of that, but when I think about myself and like other people or why people don't do things, I think a lot of it just has to deal with like being rejected. First of all, it's intimidating to, you know, go up to some people. And because I know even within myself, like I have teachers, like it's intimidating sometimes to just ask for help, you know? And granted, like you said, Hannah, like I was raised in an environment where it's like you are a dominant woman. I went to an all-girls school, and there it's like you are women of the world, you know? And so, like, it's been ingrained in my system to be that. Like, when I came to college, I remember the first day, I was really nervous because I had to ask a question, and there were boys in the classroom, and I just remember being like, I don't want to look stupid. And it was weird because I had always gone to school and been like, oh, yeah, I don't get it. And at some point, I just had to be like, you know what? Suck it up, raise your hand, ask a question, don't get lost. Like, and that's myself, but it's the whole, how are other people going to perceive me if they don't, like, how is my mentor going to perceive me? How does my teacher perceive me? Like, it's such a gray line of how you see me that's why I'd be nervous to start that kind of a relationship or put myself out on the line. I think that's where, like,
I think it is frustrating when you have, you know, I've had a couple of formal mentoring relationships assigned, and they don't work out. And then where do you go from there? And you feel kind of like you've failed on some level. But that's, you know, the farther away from those relationships that I get, the more I realize it doesn't really matter that didn't work out because I created other ones later on. I mean, it did delay me in identifying another mentor because I was disappointed those relationships didn't work out, but it ultimately led me to the person that I currently see as my mentor, who does help me grow professionally and personally. So I think if you do have a failed mentoring relationship, it does kind of keep you from starting over. But it shouldn't, you know?
It's fear. We all fear failure. We all fear not living up to the standards and all of that. And I think that for me, that's probably the biggest hindrance to finding a successful mentorship, is that I fear not living up to their standards. And then, I mean, ultimately it's me not living up to my own standards. But here's this person again that I've kind of put on a pedestal, which that pedestal I need to knock out. I know I need to knock out and say that they're equal to me, but man, that's hard. It's an emotional, mental game we play with ourselves that only hold us back.
I agree. For me, it's a fear and a trust thing. So I think it's amazing that you are able to, raise your hand in class and speak up. I was not that student. Wasn't as an undergrad, wasn't as a master's student. Finally getting into it. Finally, as a doctoral student, I'm raising my hand. But for me, it's that fear of being wrong. It's that, and for me, it's probably a level of trust. So when I'm looking for a mentor, I'm looking for someone to kind of throw out some ideas of, I'm hitting this roadblock or this roadblock, and this is, professionally where I am, and what can I share? And for me, I need to have that person is going to be there 110%, and that's not gonna trickle down or go somewhere that can be misinterpreted. And so for me, I probably, my own personality is I just keep it within. And so if I don't have that 110% trust with someone, I'm not going to share it. And so that's just my own personality of how do I start navigating that? How do I build up those relationships? But I think for me, it's, how do you make the time? Again, we can cop out and have, I got to take care of 510 other things before I take care of myself. But how do I make time for myself? How do I make time to know that I need to build those relationships so that I can have that sounding board or kind of that person to bounce ideas off of? Because that doesn't, for me personally, that doesn't come naturally. I'm amazed by the two of you and Larissa as well that you're able to have those relationships. But for me personally, that does not come easily.
I think just to tail off with what Michelle was saying, I think it goes back to fear, but it goes back to confidence that you can give something to somebody, even if it's just a little thing, even if everybody walks out of here with like, hey, you know what, I can be a mentor, or I can have the confidence to ask somebody to, to mentor me in some kind of way. I think that has a lot to do with it. I don't have a lot of confidence in myself sometimes that, I'm pretty educated and pretty intelligent. I can pass on little bits of wisdom. I always feel that with my own kids, like, oh yeah, I'm smart. You listen to me now. Do what I say. But of course, they're my children. I think it's different with your peers and with, people you may talk to and you think, okay, well, maybe I don't have that much to offer, but you do.
Yeah, and I think too, just stemming off of what you said, I think it's difficult for me more than anything to foster a relationship that is where I actively have to seek that person to be a mentor, because I feel like I've begun to live my life by everything happens for a reason, and all the people that have been the best mentors for me are people who I've literally bumped into, like literally have stood next to in the subway line. Like that there's been someone who I've just made some under the breath comment and they thought it was hilarious, or they thought it was bratty, or they thought it was, and they connected with me on some like really tiny level. And so those are the relationships that I've seen positive growth come out of. And so it makes me nervous to foster something formally, because there's not that instant, natural, organic connection that makes it really, really easy to create a relationship.
Well, I think one of the things that we've been sort of talking about, and that, like you especially, since you've had problems doing that you should think about, is that mentoring doesn't necessarily have to be formal. Like, I am very lucky because Katie started out as my advisor, and we fostered a relationship in that way. And it's not I would not necessarily call it completely formal now, because it's a lot more personal than when it started. But I think one of the things that we've kind of been talking about, and I feel like when I define mentoring, I don't necessarily define it as something that you have to seek out formally. You can use those people that you bump into, I think, and get just as much from them. I mean, the people that would go to you and say, be my mentor, I have so much respect for them, but I would probably never do that. And I don't think that it would ever work for me. I mean, I didn't go to Katie and ask her to really be my advisor.
No, unfortunately, at the meeting, you were just assigned.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, I had a little bit of a choice, but I was like, okay, she's the coolest or whatever. She's the one I get. I know the best. She's the one I'm most comfortable with. But it's not it doesn't always have to work like that. And I think that if you approach mentoring, which I guess is what we're trying to get from this whole conversation, if you approach mentoring like with a box definition of how it should be done, then you're probably not going to get as much out of it as you could.
I personally think I'm a person who I like to have lots of friends. I'm a wooer. It's one of my traits, I guess. I need to win others over, and it's true. But so I love having multiple friends, love meeting new people, but at the same time when I think about my friends, I'm a very devoted friend. So when I say this is my best friend, these are my best friends, I'm learning something from them. And it's a genuine thing, and it's more than just wooing someone over. And I think that with true friendship, it should be a mentoring thing, because if I'm your friend, I have nothing but the best intentions for you, and I want you to succeed, and you share your life experiences, and you make mistakes and learn lessons. I think that a real true friendship is a mentor.
Although, okay, you've probably heard parents say, I want to be my kid's friend. Right? And we
Not my parents.
and then the children are cringing, right? No, but here's the thing, I think it's important for there to be a sincere relationship where both people are invested, and invested for a good reason, because we want to help each other. And I think that that's inherently friendly. But it's not necessarily that I don't necessarily need my mentor or all mentors, because I think people have lots of mentors. That person has to be my friend that I'm gonna call up and shoot the darts with, yes, or gab on the phone for a couple hours. This is someone that I also have identified as being unique, that they possess certain attributes and characteristics and resources that I know I can take advantage of in a good way. But yes, I feel comfortable enough going to them. And I'm sitting up here, I've been it kind of hit me as Larissa was talking and as Michelle was talking, that I'm mad at myself, in that we're sitting up here and letting them all watch us converse about mentorship. And this was one of the things that I helped create. And I don't take advantage of my own mentorship.
What is your gift as a mentor? What do you have to give? Because we're hoping at your table, maybe you'll find somebody you didn't know before and be able to say that next time when you need something, or you want to learn something, or you want to be mentored in one of the many, from informal all the way to formal. But to think about, what are your gifts?
Okay, I'll start. I feel like as a mentor...
Wait, who are you?
My name is Morgan.
Morgan.
A sophomore here at Creighton. Something that I feel like I have to give is a very positive attitude, just based on what I have gone through in my life and how I've dealt with things. But I know how easy it is to kind of slip into a negative attitude and outlook on what's happening with you. And I just kind of think that keeping a positive attitude is really what to do, and I try to help other people stay positive as well. So
the question is, what are your gifts that you bring to a mentor relationship? For me, I think that I probably my excitement and my passion to see the person that I'm helping do what I know that they're capable of doing, because hopefully I'm not pushing them to do things that they're not capable of doing. But yeah, it's funny, because when I teach persuasion, I teach the same thing. It's just to find your own personal passion, and then I use my passion for that relationship to help drive the relationship.
I think those of you that know me, I'm a little blunt, and sometimes that gets me into trouble. But I think my truthfulness, when I challenge people and I say, is that really what you want to do? And a a lot of times it's my job. I'm having to do that. But to really start to challenge them about, okay, let's talk about this. And kind of when they go maybe down a wrong path or what they're doing, you know, just calling them out on it and being truthful with them and making them recognize things. I think sometimes I do that well.
I think for me, I'm a pretty good listener. I'm probably more of a listener than a talker. And I think for any student who's worked with me, they know that I love to play the devil's advocate card. And so whether it's an advisor or a mentor role, I think for me, I'd very much like to challenge and push back of, have you critically thought out why you're making that decision or what that role is or what the dominoes are going to play out if you decide to go down that road? And so I'm not going to tell you what's right or wrong or what my viewpoint on it usually is. I try to keep that out of it, especially as an advisor, but very much so that they can, that individual, that mentee or that person can stand firm in their decision and say, I played out every scenario. I know this is the best for me. And so to just kind of to be that person, because I know, again, I've been a product of a mentor who used that, and that's very much shaped and formed me who I am as an advisor. And so I think that's something I could bring to the table.
I was just going to add, I think that the listening is definitely really, really important, and I think I'm good at that. And I think it's also important to be able to be truthful with people. And like you said, I think those are two of the things that I have to give as a mentor to people. And I think that combining the listening and combining telling people the truth, and I mean, obviously doing it in a tactful way that motivates people as opposed to discourages them. But I think that those are two of the really important things that I could bring as well. And I think those are good things to bring up.
I think honesty is a really, really important attribute in the mentor role. Like, if you're not willing to be honest with the person that you're there to mentor, I'm not sure why you're in that position.
I agree, and I would almost say, not to bring it back to the previous question, but that's one of the things that I kind of think about with friendship. A friend is somebody who, may not always be truthful with you. They may tell you things to make you feel better. They may be there to support you when you're feeling really down about something your mentor said to you that made you realize, honestly, that made you realize maybe I'm not pushing myself as much as I could be. Maybe I should be focusing on something different. You know what I mean? I feel like that is one of the things that is really characteristic of a mentor relationship, a mentoring relationship.
And I think one of the things that's difficult for us is that sometimes it's hard for us to be blunt and be honest.
Sometimes.
And I think it's I think it kind of goes back a little bit to what Kelly said about kind of the nature of women, that we're societally spoken for as the emotional caregivers. And how do you be the emotional caregiver when you have to say something that's not so great to hear? But what's great to hear, or the not so great thing to hear, is what needs to be heard.
I think that's where trust comes from. You said when you Googled it, researched it, whatever, Wikipedia'd it.
No, Wikipedia.
I'm just saying. Well then.
What?
Webster. Taking it old school. Well, I think that's where that comes from. Like, that's where you get trust is from. And I think it's because, like, people who I do trust, mentors or friends or whatever they are, it's because they're more honest with me. That's a part of putting yourself out there. Like, I think that's what that all ties into. And for myself, I think what I've decided is that I think it's the fact that I can look on both sides of a situation. I'm very strategic in the sense of I've come up with these plans, and I can what's the word I'm looking? Empathize with others, and that's important. But at the same time, have a sense of like what I want, what I think is right, what I think. Being able to see both ends of the spectrum is important.
Before we move on to the final question of the day, oddly enough, the women from The View would like to be heard on the previous question. So they've had a little sidebar up here, and they would like to have they would like to be heard or have been encouraged to share.
Is this me? Okay, sorry. We were having a good conversation. Basically, we were just commenting when we kind of threw it back to y'all that I just noticed that the energy of the panel on the last question just kind of plummeted. We were very soft-spoken. Connie's like, let me reflect before I respond, which we thought was pretty funny because Connie throws some good stuff out there, but she needed a moment to think about that. And how ironic that we talk about how do we share our gifts and our talents, and we talk about being these humble people and working at a Catholic institution. Sometimes we're taught to be humble, but how do we also, I mean, we talked about tooting our horns, but how do we balance that humility with also being proud of who we are and celebrating that? Yes, I am definitely someone with students who challenges and likes to be that person to say, challenge the status quo, to be that devil's advocate. But I'm a pretty strong, feisty woman as well, and so I think I could be a good mentor in other ways. Again, I'm not the most extroverted person out there, but as an introvert, for those of you who are out there, I can probably offer some different life experiences as well. And it was just really ironic to me as we're sitting up here talking about mentoring that it was like, humble. Okay, I'm a good listener, and it was just the irony was just kind of striking to me. Tammy.
Yeah, it was felt by every single one of us up here.
Sorry.
It just does prove that we don't have scripts.
Yeah.
Oh, stop, Tammy.
Stop.
I know.
So I'm glad that other people noticed that,
But we wanted to bring attention to it because it was pretty darn obvious to us and awkward and uncomfortable. But now we've broken the ice. So we're going to talk about other stuff too.
Moving on.
Okay, so the final question of the day is, how do we institutionalize this? How do we make this, how do we build a mentoring culture? How do we take this and give it some legs, make it last beyond today's conversation? How do we build a mentoring culture at Creighton University? And I'm going to ask this one time if somebody will be a recorder at the table. We'll collect those records because we really are going to write a report today. There aren't cards.
Can we have someone up here?
Yeah, can we have a volunteer too?
We're going to write a report based on the voices that are here today. So we're going to ask that somebody be a reporter and take down the conversation and build that so we can move forward. So
you don't want to be a recorder and you want to come up here.
Yeah.
And we need another volunteer.
Come on, volunteer.
We need one more volunteer.
Yay. Way to represent table 9. Woo. Okay. That was my table.
Good job. Good job.
And you are?
My name is Becky. I work in the Office of Multicultural Affairs.
Tell them.
All right.
Let me recap.
Office of Multicultural Affairs.
Becky from Multicultural Affairs, everyone. Woo! We're talking about how do we create, or how do we at least start to begin the conversation about how here on our campus in this community we can create a culture of mentoring.
But we've begun the conversation. Now how do we keep it alive and not have it die as you exit the door? That's the question.
Right. And I, as the communication expert, am going to say, with communication, I said this earlier in one of the panels that I was attending, and it really involves literally taking some risk and opening our mouths and just talking to each other and reaching out and forming relationships that have meaning. And the risk is, especially for me, the hardest thing. So I need to be willing to do that.
I think for me, in a time of financial enhancements, that sounds so pretty, doesn't it? Financial enhancements and a time of transition, I think it's easy for us to kind of go back into our silos and kind of focus on taking care of ourselves and in our areas. And I think this is the important time and a time of transition of how do we focus on building that community and that network. When we had this conversation around the table, possibly over the summer or over the fall, we've been talking for a while, this group, but we talked about how do we create a culture of mentoring at Creighton and not just a mentoring session or a program or a sign up here and you're going to be my assigned mentor. I think there are good things with that. I think there are some barriers to that as well. But how do we create this culture? And I think it has to be that open communication. I think it has to be being able to be willing to ask, will you be my mentor? Or put yourself outside of your comfort zone. And again, for someone who is awkward, that's difficult sometimes. I loved Larissa's response of, how do we not put ourselves into a box of defining what a mentor is and being open to everyone's own personal definition of what that relationship can be? But I think it's going to take a village, and I don't think it just can be a summit here. I think it's got to be each one of us saying we're reaching out not only to be a mentor, but to focus on ourselves too, and to be mentored as well. Especially when we say we don't have time, we're busy, we're humble. Let's stop the excuses already.
I think table 9 was ahead because we already kind of discussed this and we talked about, and so I didn't really come up here just to sit in the comfy chair, but it's kind of nice. What I would like to say, I feel guilty taking time. My mentor is in the back of the room, Linda Pappas, and since I'm now on the opposite end of campus, I don't feel like I get to connect with her as much, and I feel guilty that I'm not building that relationship, but I also feel guilty when I try to. I think our university sometimes creates this culture of, I know faculty members are sometimes given mentors. This is who your mentor is going to be. We kind of ask, please don't do that. Let us choose our own. Especially as women, we want to connect with the people we connect with best. But if you could instead give us time, say, hey, 2 hours a month is going to be connection time. And that's when you have time to actually connect with your mentor. Because sometimes we feel guilty if, there's time built into my schedule to mentor students because that's part of my job, but not to mentor my own self and get my own self mentored and refreshed. So if the university could build in connection time, or I think one department talked about they have community time where they do lunch together, but if it could be more university-wide to go across and reach across to our mentors and have that time, that would be beneficial.
Sometimes I wish that there was better peer mentoring. I think you have to seek it out if you want it. And I remember if I didn't have the resources, know people that I know, or wasn't in a sorority and we have an educational mentoring program, if I didn't have that, I don't know where I would start necessarily. Because I think it's helpful just to ask someone who's maybe that just 1 or 2 years older than you and being like, hey, I really need I'm interested in this. What can I do? Because I don't know. I just think there's, like you said, it's just a lack of communication. And I like to talk. So I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem reaching out and asking people, but people do. It comes back to there's a reason we're sitting here talking about why it's so hard, because it is. And it's just a matter of communicating and putting yourself out there.
Well, and I think it's important for us to not only seek out mentorship, but for mentors to seek out mentees and know that every single person here has something to offer someone else. And it may be in the strangest way in which those two people are brought together, but you happen across those people or you're introduced to those people. And if you identify something that you can offer that person besides just someone to know, why not take advantage of that? I don't understand why we don't do more of that here every single day. And I guess that's why my thing is go back to the communication. Take the chance to offer your gifts to someone else. You may barely know them, but say, hey, let's go and grab coffee and have a conversation or whatever, but just start the lines of communication and then share with them how you can really make a difference in their life. And then you're going to get from them as well. And that's the important thing.
I think something that's really important that everybody who's thinking about mentoring, whether or not you're going to mentor or be mentored, is to not think about it like work. Like, you should think about it like you want to seek someone out, and you should think about it as a relationship that may not, I mean, we talked about that, you know, you're not necessarily going into a two-way exchange. I mean, you might be, and hopefully that's how it works, but I don't think anybody should think about mentoring as, you know, something extra to do, something extra to be trying to focus your time on when you're doing all these other things as well. I think that it would be very helpful, and it would probably foster a lot more just progress in terms of mentoring around campus and with everybody if people could think of it a little bit more positively and a little bit more like they're gaining something.
Okay, we're on the last word, Kelly. Sorry if you didn't speak up. So we only have a few minutes left, so we would really like to walk away today with some real solid ideas about how we can actually make this a culture of mentoring at Creighton University. For some of them who shall remain nameless, this is really an outside the box because there was no script and not really an awareness of what the questions were. So I really think they deserve our round of applause for being themselves.
Because I'm the MC, get to make a special announcement today. I'm so excited. Last year, there was a lot of feedback. You know, last year was focused on listening and hearing about what was going on campus, and this year was about action. And a single thing that came out of last year is that we need more resources for professional development. So, we are announcing a professional scholarship program for women. And everybody who is here today is going to have the opportunity to apply for a scholarship. There will be a $500 scholarship intended for growth and personal development, and it's a tangible resource for you to use for that. Maybe there's a conference you want to go to. You've written yourself some notes today of things you want to do. Maybe there's a meeting you've been dying to attend, but your college or your division just doesn't have enough money for you to do that. Well, here's an opportunity. Maybe there was a conversation during the Fishbowl and you want to get a book and you want to do some kind of seminar on mentoring. Well, here's your opportunity. Thank you again for your active participation today. These type of meetings are only as good as the people who participate in them, so I think you all need to give yourself a round of applause. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being a wonderful audience.